Hi, Simon.
Hey, Lisa.
How was your weekend? You went away, didn't you?
Yeah, we went to Portland for a family wedding, and
Sweet.
yeah, it was good. It's
Where'd you stay?
we stayed actually in Old Town in this really charming hotel called the Benson,
Hmm.
and it's part of the Hilton family. So
Okay.
they were great. Like it's not super fancy, but they had a fitness thing, and it's history, and it's a really nice. They had like a renovation, but I think the big thing was just like everybody who worked there was great. Like you valet parked your car because there's no parking in Portland,
Mm.
so they would
Mm-hmm.
have your car up, in 5 or 10 minutes if you needed it. Um, and every time we walked in, we would just go to the front desk and say, "Hey, can we have a couple bottles of water?" And they're like, "Yeah, how many you want?" And they would just hand out bottled water. And it
Are
was
you a Hilton
loyalist.
fan? Yeah.
Yeah, I am
Are you?
actually.
Do you have
Yeah.
their credit card?
No, I don't have their credit card.
Oh.
Just have their membership. But I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's nice. Like just being a bit of a member. And I don't pay anything, but I get upgrades every so often, like if we
Mm-hmm.
stay somewhere
Mm-hmm.
like in LA or whatever. And it really
Mm-hmm.
depends. Like I'm not buying suites or like staying
Right.
there like every week for business or something like that. It really is mostly for personal. But what it does is now when I look at somewhere on Expedia or wherever to
You
think about a
prioritize
hotel,
it.
I do. And it's because
Yeah.
I think I know what the experience is hopefully going to be, or the level of quality. Like I made the mistake once of staying at a place called Quality Inn because it was close to Knott's Berry
I think
Farm.
that's IHG, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I'm not sure who it is, but it's like La Quinta and some of
Mm-hmm.
those. And you
I have to
read
look it up.
online and it looks decent and things like that. And I didn't want to spend a lot of money. This was a guy's trip to LA, and it wasn't like we were gonna do the room
Choice
was just to
hotels.
sleep
I had
in.
to look it up. Choice hotels.
Yeah. But oh
Yeah.
man, it was not quality. Like the cops knocked on our door and they're like,
No.
yeah,
No.
they had the wrong room, but there
Oh
was
my
some
God.
drama going. I'm like,
Jeez.
the hotel. I
I
will say
wouldn't
this:
blame the hotel.
the
Yeah.
hotel
It's not
did
their
give
fault.
us 1 night comp,
That's
so
nice.
it was nice because we had 2 rooms, and it's like it was kind of crazy. So, but
That's
anyway, yes,
crazy.
I tend to be loyal once I experience a certain brand or hotel like that,
Yeah.
because I have expectations.
It's very funny that we're using this example. So I think I've told you, maybe I've talked about it on this podcast before too, is that a couple of years ago, I started getting into the whole points and credit card game. And so I am now less of a loyalist to a hotel, or less of one. Hotels and airlines. To me, I'm just more about, like, if it's Chase, Capital One, American Express, if I
Right.
can transfer those points to like any of these other things, then I'm going to do that. But I do find, to your point, I do find that, so like if we're talking about hotels, Marriott has the largest footprint. So you're
Sure.
going to just see and they own all kinds of, they own Ritz-Carlton, for crying out loud. So they own
Sheraton,
Westin, that's all them. So there's
Westin
that.
is them now.
It's also them too.
Okay.
Yep. They own so much,
Yeah.
and they keep sort of gobbling up other ones. But then there's also Hyatt, and then Hyatt's fewer. But same thing, like you can kind of you figure out what's the, yes.
Yeah. And
so
Hilton has that. They have like the garden inns,
they do.
and
Yeah. It's like, and
they're
I think that's
perfectly
smart.
fine. Especially again, if you're a Hilton member, you seem to get taken care of a little better.
I think so too.
So what were you saying, that it's more about for you now?
It's more about the kind of convenience. Now, I will say there's certain things where, even though I might be more, okay, so like flights, if I'm paying cash, I am looking at what's the right time and the right, cost. Like those are the things I'm factoring in if I'm paying cash.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say that I might have, if everything is the same, I might have a preference of one airline over another one. And it's less about the loyalty, because now I've got points everywhere.
Yeah.
And I can transfer. So to me, I feel like it's less about that. And it's more about value that I'm going to get, but also the experience might be layered on top of that.
You're probably still brand plays a huge part. And when you look at the list of places you can
It
transfer
does.
to, you're going to
It
go with
does.
something
It's true.
unless you read. I've tried a lot of boutique places too, which I think
Yep.
is kind of fun.
Yeah,
But you do take a risk, right?
you do. And I, again, because I'm in this credit card game, like, and I don't manufacture any spend that I shouldn't be manufacturing. That's
Right.
number one rule. I
Like the
should do this. Is
$20,000 that you need to spend for the American
Yeah,
Express
right.
card.
I know, for business, like it was business card, I think. So yeah, so something like that. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to be able to spend that in 3 months. So I'm not going to try or not going to do
Right.
that. But
Right.
there's other things where I have, an American Express, a American Airlines card that gives me lounge access, for example. So it's like, it'll give me status, or like Hilton. I have a Hilton credit card that gives me status. I'm a Diamond Hilton member, but it's just because I
Wow.
hold this credit card. That's
Okay.
it. I hold a credit card, and every year they give me a free night that I can go anywhere. I can go to a Waldorf Astoria. I can go, doesn't matter. It's not capped. So to me, that's a consideration as well. And it's like, I'm like, okay, so if I fly American Airlines, I'm going to be able to be possibly upgraded. So there are all these other considerations that I do think about, but it's, I don't think, yeah, maybe I've become a little bit, maybe my list is smaller though. Like, no disrespect to Choice Hotels, but I'm not probably going to be staying at a Holiday Inn or Quality, whatever it's called.
Yeah. I mean, I would say I have tiers of that based on not those kind of tiers. Well, maybe, but no. I mean, like, Best Western, right? Best Westerns are very predictable usually. Most, like, I would say the majority of every Best Western I've ever stayed at for the price is what you get what you get for the price, and you feel like it's safe and clean.
Sure.
But it's not fancy, right? And there's no water bottles. And,
well, I'm going to tell you one more thing. So I absolutely do that, and I will relocate. So again, if I have, because of these credit cards that I have, or I have points, I try to stay. If I've got Hyatt points, I'll see if there's something that I can stay with that. So when Rob and I went to Hawaii, we had 2 nights in Honolulu before actually going on the ship. So the first night, because we got in really late at like 10 o'clock at night, I'm like, I don't want to spend a lot of money on a hotel because it's like, I just want to like sleep. So I had some free night certificate that was only up to category 4 or whatever, which is not high. So I was like, we'll just stay there. Next day, we'll relocate to this other fancy one, which was beautiful. So I'm so glad, because then we had the whole day that night, next day. Like it was a good way to go. Even though you have to relocate, it was good.
So just to close out sort of on this.
I know, we're done with this.
Cheap
Enough
hotel,
about hotels.
though, if you're saying I'm just going to go there to spend the night. Exactly. Like if you can't sleep,
older I get,
it does. If it's noisy, if the bed is awful, the room smells like it was cleaned at a hospital. It's like,
so shout out, this hotel was actually quite nice. And as we like looked at our room, I was like, oh, we could have stayed here another night. Like it was nice. But after we got to this other one, I was like, oh, and they were both on, like, one's a certificate, one was on points. So I'm like, I'm really glad that we went to this other one.
Give the shout out for the value one. We'll call it value.
It was a Hyatt at Waikiki.
Okay.
So, and it's like, when you get there, it's like, it looks like it's in a like high-rise apartment complex, and there's barely a sign.
Right.
And you're like walking into the lobby, and they're like, oh, take that elevator up to the 4th floor. That's where the reception is. And it's like, it looked super shady. Like it was very weird. So we figure it out, we get there, and I'm like, oh, like it was actually nice once you got there. And our room was huge. Like it was a weird shape, but it was really big. Like it had a little extra seating area. Like it was,
oh, that's nice.
It was nice. And then the other one that we went to was a Hilton property called, it was an LXR property. And it was gorgeous. And even when we got there, people greeted us as we're like dragging our luggage. All same thing, elevator up to the reception. somebody was like, "Oh, are you staying with us?" And they took us up the elevator. They brought us to reception, and they're like, "Oh, this is Miss Flosnick who's staying." Like they're like introduced us to the reception, and then they gave us like a water, and then these like Hawaiian jellies. That is like, it was a very nice experience. And I'm like,
Oh,
"This is nice. This is nice." Yeah,
yeah,
it was
that's
good.
cool.
It was good. It was
Well,
good.
so I mean,
Okay,
all of this
enough.
said, and this was probably one of our
I know.
longer intros of chit
I
chat,
know.
but I mean,
Relevant.
today's topic is all about brand loyalty and in different kinds of markets, especially competitive market. For example, like we were just saying, there's so much choice in where you stay in the hotels that a bed is a bed in a sense, a room is a room. But the idea is that you have to think about building brand loyalty, and there's ways to get there, right? So that you can differentiate yourself from all these other hotel options or all these other lawyer options or all these other housekeeping
Construction
services, yeah,
contractors.
contractors or landscapers, whoever it is, right? And I think oftentimes people do this, but that they're not intentional or consistent about their brand loyalty. So I think we want to like talk about like different ways that you can make those connections, right, for customers and build a longer relationship, like just like we're talking about, like with again hotels, or even the fact that you might have the same housekeeper, house cleaner, land gardener, whoever it is, right?
Contractor.
Yeah, that you always go
Yeah.
to. So,
Yeah.
I
And I
mean,
think it's different if it's like a person, like a contractor, a housekeeper, or, lawyer, accountant, versus, where do I get, who's my phone provider, or who's my, the airline we talked about. So like a bigger company that like versus sort of the local
so there's
small business
I agree,
owner.
but there's like the insurance company, right? Or your, it could be any other, a lot of service industries. This is critical, right? They're not these small businesses that are two or three people, a receptionist or an admin or office manager and the lead, like subject matter expert, whatever area that is. And maybe there's another, person or something like that. They, it's like brand loyalty, like you're saying about the phones, but it's also personal brand a personal
Yeah.
brand, right? And being
Yes,
loyal to that
exactly.
personal brand. So I think, well, why don't we like
Kind of
clearly
talk.
define, what
Yeah.
we think, brand loyalty is, and what makes up brand loyalty.
Yeah, I want you to do it.
Well, I mean, we'll dig into it, but I would say that
You
there's
start.
probably three main sort of pillars, if you will. I think one is that when you think about brand loyalty, you think about what someone offers, what their promise is of their brand, like we just said, like a great night's sleep, or a really elegant room, or a safe room,
Being
or
escorted.
right.
Like to me, that was like a nice
But
touch. Like I
what
keep
you
looking at these
want,
LXR hotels now.
yeah, you want them to deliver on that, right? So if the
Yeah.
first pillar is, if you say you're going to do something, no matter what service or business you're in, you agree, you come through with that, right? You deliver on it. It's the classic under promise and over deliver kind of concept, right? Where someone
Yep.
gets a really wow experience, right? Like, like you said, being escorted to your room or to whatever, right? It's
Yeah.
like that. You didn't expect that, but you hope that this brand, excuse me, would have that kind of follow through. I think the second thing, and it's related, is sort of the customer experiences. So all the different elements that go into creating a good brand, because again, gardeners are gardeners, and yeah, what makes them different? Why would you choose one over the other? And it could be their attention to detail, like, or it could be how they communicate with you, right? That they understand when you say, don't create topiaries in my front yard, right? I want more organic looking when you trim the bushes. And if there's a language barrier or if they just aren't really making a connection with you, like that's not a great customer experience, right? And then, I mean, taking this sort of digital is, there are ways with your website that if you get feedback that, people don't understand some part of your process, maybe you have to sign up for something first or register or whatever. And it's not a great customer experience when you're actually in there, then that impacts your sort of brand. Like people are going to say, well, I couldn't figure out their website or that it was really awkward. So I would go with someone else. Like, I mean, it could
Mm-hmm.
come down to that sort of thing. And then I think probably the third thing is really about communication, but it's what you want to try to encourage is word of mouth, right? Ultimately, you're not going to have, as a small business, hundreds of thousands of dollars or even tens of $1,000s to spend on advertising. So your strategies to get leads and get customers and then grow those customers into maybe
Mm-hmm.
more services or
Mm-hmm.
whatever is really about other people word of mouth, right? And that could be literally face to face. You and I talk about something and you say to me, you've got to try this credit card, right? Because
Yep.
based on what I know about
Because I
you,
get points from
yeah,
it.
but you're a fan of
Just
Hilton,
kidding.
and one of these
Sure.
cards offers you a increased Hilton membership, for example.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think
Yeah.
the other way that the word of mouth comes out, which is not literally out of a mouth, but it's in the form of customer reviews. So
Yep.
Yelp or any of the Google Maps kind of has a review function for businesses.
Yeah.
That's really
Google My
critical.
Business.
Yeah. And how many of us, I think, are biased? We won't look at things that are less than 3.5 stars, right?
It's very
So,
true.
so if people's reviews are in the sense of word of mouth, but user generated content or communication, like that to me is the third pillar, and you have to pay attention to that.
Yep. You made me think of a couple of things. One is that this is veering also into personal brand too. So
Mm-hmm.
if for those individual, like a contractor or housekeeper, you and I, like word of mouth. And again, like everything we talk about, I feel like again, tangents to tactics, because it'll go off into something else. You and I have talked about this with word of mouth. We've talked about the importance of that. But like, why would somebody work with you or me? Usually it's word of mouth. Like we don't
Mm-hmm.
do advertising because it's something that we also, it goes both ways. Like we actually want to work with people that maybe somebody else has vouched for. So
Right.
I look at it that way. So it's not
Yeah.
brand loyalty necessarily, but it's more about like, is it going to be a good personality fit when it's at
Sure.
that level? And then I forgot what the other thing was. So
Well,
there were two things. I was trying to be so patient because, I interrupt all the time. So I was thinking like, oh no, I'm just going to keep it to myself. I'll remember it
we'll have to
eventually, but I
take
didn't.
notes. I was going to
I
say
know.
one of the things that you mentioned personal brand and like individuals, but um, pretty much everybody, I know contractors and I know some lawyers and people like that, they always have somebody else answering the phone. So,
Mm,
and I think that is a huge part. Like I remember we were looking for a rental management company,
mm-hmm.
basically to manage a couple single family homes that we have
Well, la-di-da.
yeah, first
Jeez.
world problem, right?
I
But I
know.
don't want to get a
Gosh.
call at 3 in the
Relatable.
morning
Relatable.
when something is leaking
Pipes
or
burst.
whatever.
Yeah.
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 So I think if the pipes burst, I probably would get a phone call. But if it's just a
Yeah.
leaking, whatever. Anyway, I remember calling this one place that had been referred to us. Oh, these guys are good and they have a great percentage. And the lady that answered the phone, I don't know if she had a really bad day or if she was just naturally grouchy and
Hmm.
like I was like, I'm not going to work with them. Like we had to, and then
Yeah.
and I think we left a message and she said, oh, they'll call you back when they have a chance, and I'm like, okay, that's not really how you should say, I'm sorry, they're tied up right now, but I'm sure they could call you in the afternoon, whatever. Right. And so I remember I didn't get a call back and I called them again and I said, well, I was referred to you by this guy and oh well, I will see what we can do. And I was just like,
No.
And I'm like, you
Swipe
know what?
left.
If my renters call you because there's a problem and you treat them the same way, I'm going to be
No.
like, no. So the place we use now, she always answers the phone, or somebody who answers always is like, they make you feel like you're important, sort of like your
Mm-hmm.
hotel experience,
Mm-hmm.
and that your issue or situation matters to them, whether or not they prioritize it immediately or not. That's, but it's still a good customer experience. So,
Totally. Yeah, it's important.
and then
Um,
I think
well, wait a
there's
minute.
okay. Go ahead.
So you talked about reviews, and we've also talked about, because it's good to know, but it's almost like it's a gut check on how are people perceiving you.
Mm-hmm.
And so reviews, we've talked about surveys before, because that's a way if you can speak directly to your customers and if they're honest about it.
Mm-hmm.
There's this other tactic that usually larger companies use, but it's something that I think we should just at least introduce so people are familiar with it. It's called the Net Promoter Score, and it's something that you have to have a really large base in the first place. Every 6 months,
A
you
really
will
large what?
base,
Oh,
like customer
base.
base. Yeah.
I thought you said ace, like ace in the hole. I know it's like no
Base.
base, a large
So, like,
customer
if you
base.
have,
Got it.
yeah, so you have to have, probably hundreds of thousands of customers, and you would if you have software, people usually pop something up within the software to say like, hey, take our, it's like a 2-minute thing where you answer about some questions.
And what's the sort of high level?
Well, I'm trying.
Okay.
So every 6 months,
Land the plane.
you communicate. You reach out to a small subset of your customers, so you are not reaching the same people every 6 months. That's why you have to have a larger base.
Got it.
And then it is questions that will determine their sentiment, and it's literally like, these are people that are promoters. Like, in other words, they will go out of their way to say how much they think you're great. These are detractors. These are people that are going to go out of their way to say how bad you are. And then there's like neutral, and then there's like in between as well. So it's kind of like they're veering on the promoter, they're veering on the detractor, but they're not 100% there. And then there's
like
absolutely
what,
neutral.
1 to 10 kind of scale thing.
I don't remember. I think it's random. I think it's like 7. Like, it's a weird number. And then and so then you can then kind of do some analysis to say, 60% of our people are promoters and 5% are detractors. Like, that's a good place to be. Even if people are like veering or neutral, that's fine. Think of that as positive.
Right.
It's the like detractor or slightly detractor. I forget the terminology for that second to last one. Those are the ones that you got to worry about and figure out what it is that do we need to do to kind of, try to make that better. And same thing with reviews. If you have like an app store or somewhere, some Yelp, what can you do to try to turn that around? Can you email customers to ask them to write a positive review? Are your responses to negative reviews? Because sometimes
that's a
if
good point.
1
like,
star,
you should respond. Right.
Definitely. Because 1 star, it could be one particular case,
Random.
and that 1 star drags if you have 5 reviews and one of them's a 1 star, it's going to drag you down to 3, so you have to be on top of that, and you have to make sure, because sometimes if you resolve their problem, they'll change it. And so people will change their opinion on you. Yeah. So that's a little bit of a sidebar.
No, but
end sidebar. Yeah. Just as if you want to, as you grow, maybe this is something that would be relevant. And
yeah.
What else?
Well, I mean, in addition to doing things like Net Promoter Score, and again, smaller business, I don't know if you can go in and export all your Yelp reviews, for example. I think that would be cool if you could. Maybe that's a service they offer if you want. Because then you could do some analysis, right? You could either do it manually, use AI or something, and understand if there are problems maybe that you're getting feedback on. So I think that's a great point. I think the other thing to think about is that people who you can build, there's a lot of data around saying that when you make emotional connections with a brand, you're going to stay loyal to that brand longer, right? So what can you do to make sure that you're making that connection with people?
That's a good question, because I feel like, again, using you and I as an example, I think there's something about, for us anyway, it's that personal, like we treat people, we don't, it's not generic. And then we are kind of catering our services to whomever we're working with.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think from that, I don't know, that's very interesting, because to me, it's almost intangible. It's like, what is it about us that people like to work with
Well,
us?
and I think that the idea here is that when you find a client or a customer who you have some shared hobby or shared like, right, or activity or something like that, and you can make a connection. So I think it's about being sort of a little transparent and a bit sort of outgoing. But the idea, if you find out, let's say that someone's a sports fan, right, you might
Mm-hmm.
build a connection really quickly with them. I think, it's funny. I just thought of something. I think about all the like small businesses and how they have like jerseys of sports people, often, not all. And I wonder now if that's an unconscious way for them to build a connection with their customer, because maybe it was a gift from a customer, but maybe it's just something that it's one of their hobbies, right? And you go into, let's say, the barber shop and they have a
Oh, I see.
49ers jersey, and you're going to be like,
Oh,
oh, I'm a
hanging up in
49ers
the,
fan. Yeah. Like how they, in a sense, how they decorate their business. It's like those are things that start to
interesting.
build, yeah, emotional connection, right?
That is fascinating. When I had a torn meniscus, and so had a
They had pictures of good meniscuses on the wall.
no. So the orthopedic surgeon that who a random person I know referred me to, and she has pictures of the 49ers and of Stanford football players,
Mm,
and come to find out, she actually treats them.
right.
And so she was modest about it. Like, she didn't want to name drop or anything, but that's why she has them. Those are players that she's worked with before. So I'm like, that was kind of a interesting. I never thought about that. So anyway,
So
and not everybody, and if I wasn't interested in sports, I probably wouldn't have even like noticed. Like, it's not offensive. So it's just something that is like,
correct.
if you know, you know, kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, maybe it comes down in a physical location to the art that you've chosen or the kind of furniture. I mean, it could be anything that you start to make more of a connection. I think oftentimes it's more about having a conversation again, and then learning about someone and their likes and dislikes and things like that. Or, even that's
But
why, go ahead.
no, well, I was just thinking, like, if we go back to like a hotel example,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's maybe like the common things are, maybe it's like, well, I actually like to be pampered, or like
Right.
it's that. And so they might not know you personally, but you've chosen that brand because it meets the,
Well, yeah.
yeah.
And it's like I went up to the counter, the front desk, and said, "Can I have a bottle of water?" And they're great. Yeah, they're smiling, they're happy to give it out. Like a lot of places charge you like $5 in the room for a bottle of water, and here
That's true.
they're like, yeah, we, everyone needs to stay hydrated. And you're sort of like, I agree with that. It's sort of like, in a
Yes.
sense, that's a very small way of
Speaking.
doing that. So, yes.
Stay hydrated.
I think that the other thing that when you think about brand loyalty and things like that is just how much that can, it basically boosts or the spending that people spend, right? Because they're going to start to do a couple
Yes.
different things. They're going to stick with that brand and spend, but they're also
Mm-hmm.
probably willing to like upgrade. Like I almost upgraded our room because I knew I was sort of, this is going to be a great place to stay, but there's even better, like more space or, extra couch or whatever. And
Well,
once you have a loyal customer, they might be, they're willing to do those upgrades and things.
Well, and it's also depending on the thing. It might be something that I don't want to try something different because it's going to cost me if it's bad, but I already
Mm,
know it's going to be good if I do this. So, I think people tend to be very loyal to car brands. I feel like they are like they'll when it's time to get a new car or it's time to get a new TV, they often say, "Well, I'm going to start with the one that I have because I already know it and I like it."
Right.
Maybe they then explore some other options, but it's like that's at least to me the table stakes is you would start with whatever it is that you like. You just
Yeah.
keep using.
Well,
So
and think about what
yeah,
car companies do. Like, if you, I know this is true for Volkswagen, and I think for BMW, it's like if you're a prior owner, they automatically take $500 or $1,000 off of the new
that's
car that you
good.
buy from them because it's a loyalty program.
Loyalty. That's smart.
And it's smart, right? Because it might make you decide I'm not going to look at Mercedes, I'm going to stick with BMW kind of thing.
Yeah.
But what's interesting, Mercedes would be smart to say, if you're a non-Mercedes owner, here's maybe it's the
So
same deal, but they position it
this
differently.
happened recently where Polestar said, trade in your Tesla and we'll give you $20,000.
Wow.
They just did that. Yeah.
Did
And
you trade
it's
yours
funny.
in?
No, but when I was in San Diego visiting a friend and we walked into the Polestar, they have like a showcase, like Tesla has
Right.
that as well. And so I was like, "Oh, how's that going?" And they said we can't take anymore. So many people have traded in their cars. We can't take it anymore. So like it was so successful. And I remember we did this at Adobe too when we had Final Cut Pro came out
Oh, yeah.
and our Premiere Pro team, like everybody hated it, whatever version that was. They're like, these aren't Pro Tools. And so they rebelled and we were like, we pounced.
That's
We
right.
gave them 50% off.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I remember that.
It's smart.
And I mean, I'm sure that Polestar did that based on what was going on with the whole Tesla foofara, right? And that's a great smart marketing, right?
Yeah. If you can pounce on that.
And then I think the other thing to think about is that when you build a loyal connection, there's some data. It's from Capital One from a shopping survey they did, but they see that basically 80%, over 80% are willing to share personal data, right? And so
I'm one of those people.
Especially incrementally, right? And we haven't really talked about this, but the idea that when someone signs up, let's say for a credit card program, you might give basic information, right? And then you might get a survey a couple months later, a week later, and it's like, "Oh, tell us more about what you like to eat or where you like to go to dinner." Or
but you
where
don't
do you
even have to
vacation?
do that. Your credit card transactions tell that.
Sure, but that's not, when I think about this, that's not willing to share. That's like built in. This is more like you're willing to give information to somebody because you have a good brand experience. So you do an exchange, right, of information because you think this is going to improve my brand experience. And sure, maybe credit card's a bad example because of all the data that they have. But I would certainly, be more open to sharing something if I feel like there's trust, right? Ultimately, I think is part of it. That's part of the equation of loyalty.
And it's gonna be catered to me. I think that's part of it too.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's where people forget that sure, advertising is annoying. Especially in the middle of a show or some of these websites where it's just the whole thing is ads and you're trying to read a recipe or an article or whatever. But the concept is that it's supposed to be more personalized, right? It is supposed to show you things that now gets to the creepy factor. And I know we're a little on a tangent, but the more they know about you, the more creepy it gets a little bit, in that they're going to offer you ads for products that are probably logically than something you'd be interested in.
Sure.
So, I mean, I think the sort of last, you going to sneeze? There's just crazy allergies, I think, today. Bless you. Thank you. I was going to say the other thing is it comes to like you become an advocate, which we've talked about, right? Word of mouth.
Absolutely. I keep thinking about Ron. It's like he does not advertise at all. This is a contractor that I've known for a very long time.
Right.
And he's 100% word of mouth. And he's like, I remember in early 2019, I said, I'm thinking about redoing my kitchen. Oh, it's probably going to take you a year before you can get to me. Ha, ha, ha. And he was like, that's probably about right. And I'm like, so he's very good at communication. Like he literally is so backed up. Like he's like, I'm not going to be able to, like, I know I could lead you on, but like, I know I'm not going to be able to get to you for a year, literally a year. And so, but then once he's there, like he's dedicated, he's, communicates well, and he's also good at what he does. Well, he's a perfectionist. There's so many things.
I'll give him a shout out too. He's a craftsman. Okay. Like he is a true,
an artiste. Yeah, is what the person who referred him to me called him an artiste, and I was so terrified to meet him.
He's a jack of all trades. He focuses a lot on like tile and things, but he does construction and walls, and he
does everything.
Refaced fireplace for me, did a closet.
He can figure it out. So that's another thing about him too, is like what I like is that we collaborate with each other. Like I'll say, I remember there's two things that I had a vision, but I didn't know how to execute it. So there was a shelf that it was like boxes interlocking. And I've seen this kind of thing, but I just couldn't find what I wanted. And so I drew it out. I'm like, this is what I want. And he was like, cool. And he helped me figure out how to do it, but he made me do stuff. He was like, you got to sand that wood. You got to like, he made me do a bunch of stuff. It was funny, but it was like, so we literally did work on it together. And then the other one was, I have that huge, piece of art that it's Wonder Woman, and she has a speech bubble. And I was like, I have to figure out what I want her to say. And then all of a sudden this idea, and I said, I'm going to make it a whiteboard so I can change what she says. And so he helped fabricate, like I got it printed out and it's mounted to this piece of wood, but then he created a little tray table where I could put markers on it and an eraser, and then cut out a whiteboard and mounted it to the thing. So it was like, he likes doing that kind of thing too. Because I was like, I got this vision, or he'll help me like, oh, go look at this for materials, because I don't know. And he knows all these things. So anyway, so good partner and collaborator.
Well, I was going to say that
nobody's going to ever get his name because he's mine.
And I've used him too, but what's the difference there between contractor Ron and contractor another contractor is the fact that Ron took the time to have a conversation with you, right? Mm-hmm. So to build the brand loyalty, it's about delivering a promise. And, I can do that. We can figure this out. Then he comes through with it. He has a great experience. He's always talking to you. You know what's going on, even if it's going to take forever. Right. And you're
for him to
ultimately loyal, but you share his name with a few people, but not with a ton, because
only people that I
exactly
like.
But so you've helped him in essence create brand loyalty, and he has no brand.
Right. And here's the other thing too. I've had neighbors ask me, and sometimes I don't, because I'm like, I don't know if he would like them.
Right.
Yeah. So it's funny. One of my neighbors was like, asked for his help on something. And I was like, well, I'll try. I don't know. Like, he's super busy. And I'm like, I can facilitate, an initial conversation, but I can't promise you he's going to be able to get to you. And so we meet with my neighbor. Ron asked me to go with him. And so I'm sort of also trying to interpret in some cases and like pointing things out or whatever. And my neighbor's super excited about it, loves what he had to say. And months go by and Ron's just like, not yet, not yet, not yet. And my neighbor's like, is he okay? And I'm like, I'm telling you, he's busy. And then eventually got to it probably like 5-6 months later. And my neighbor was like, you're right. He was amazing. And I'm like, I know, you just have to wait. Like, if you he's good. Like, you got to wait for it. Unfortunately, you can't get it right then and there. So do you want it done well, or do you want it done fast?
Again, right. Know? That goes back to helping build brand is high quality, right? And expectation setting and things like that. What do you think? We talked a little bit about feedback, and you get that through reviews. You get that from word of mouth. We talked about, I think, surveys. Like, you could hit people up and ask them about their experience and things like that. Do you think there's any, what's the right word? Is there a magic bullet to having a really good brand loyalty scenario for your, entrepreneur, small business owner, like what would be that one thing you think is the like critical element?
Delivering what you say you're going to deliver on. And so whether that's excellent service, excellent communication, good quality. So I'm thinking of other brands that I like
Ooh.
Dyson. I'm a huge fan of. So, and to me, I'm like, their things are designed. Apple's a good example. Like their things are just designed well. Like people would just buy it because they're like, it's Apple. And it's like, Apple means, good quality, high quality, well designed. You might pay more for it, but it's like, what you're getting. And I mean, I feel like there's never really been a problem. Anyway, so I'm getting off on tangent. Yeah. So it's like, it's basically like,
you keep your commitment, you deliver.
You keep your commitment on what it is that you stand for overall. And then I think that would to me be that number one thing. And then from that, people trust you. It's like they expect this. And until you don't do that, then they're not going to trust you. And so then they're going to be like, well, I'm going to look elsewhere because they just blew it, Yep.
I think
what about you?
Yeah. Well, I was going to say my thing is first impressions matter. I think
that's a good one too.
Again, it goes back to my example of calling someone who was referred to me by somebody I trust to be a rental manager, but their front office
I wouldn't give them another chance.
Yeah. And I've had similar situations with contractors where the person I called sounded like an idiot. And I'm like, do I want to work with a designer or whoever whose front office people aren't polite? And the opposite is true. There's a company we use to remodel our closets. We called a few different places. One was super snooty. I'm like, okay. One was like, sure, whatever, come in, and then the
Goldilocks.
The one we went with, she's like, oh, hi, answered the phone, and she's like, oh yeah, this is what we do. This is like she was trained person answering the phone, answering basic questions about that we were having, and then knew when to say, why don't I set up an appointment with somebody? You know what? You all of that. And it was such a great experience. Right. And then I've called to have something fixed. And they're like, oh yeah, you're totally covered. Like, well, let me take a note and I'll have to have one of our people, but they're very like approachable, I guess. And not, they're smart, like they're informed, right? You're not calling and the person's like, well, I don't know, and I'll take a message, right? It's like, well, I could have just left a voicemail if that's all you're doing. So first impressions matter, I think, always.
I think that's very good advice. So do that first.
So think about
make sure.
Yeah. Think about what is your first impression? Like if you just ask your friends, like if they met you for the first time, what would their first impression be?
Think about you and me. If it's like we come up all disheveled and our hair's messy and, we're not organized, like,
right.
I'm not going to want to work with somebody like that.
Right.
Or like an interview, same thing. Ugh, God. Yeah, no. Yeah.
All right.
Well, that's probably a good place to stop. But there's one thing that I want to mention.
Sure.
We need to, if you are listening to this, subscribe, whether you're listening or watching.
Or you
only
subscribe. Like one episode because your friend was a guest. Please subscribe.
Still subscribe. Exactly. It helps us a lot.
Yeah.
And then, tell other people about it if you find it helpful.
Sure.
And post on LinkedIn if you want to.
Sure.
All right. So from tangents to tactics,
it's mostly marketing.